I was 47 years old when my wife walked out the door for the last time. I remember standing in our kitchen, watching her taillights disappear down the driveway, and thinking that this must be what it feels like when your life splits cleanly in two. Before and after. There was no screaming that day, no thrown dishes or slammed doors, just the soft click of the latch and the sound of her car starting in the cold morning air. She had said everything she needed to say 3 days earlier. When I came home and told her I had been let go, 22 years at the same company, gone, just like that. And now, apparently, so was she. We had been married for 19 years. High school sweethearts? The kind of story people smile about at dinner parties. We grew up together, built a life together, or at least I thought we had. Sarah was beautiful and smart, and had always been more ambitious than me, though she would never say it quite that way. She worked in marketing at a pharmaceutical company, always climbing, always networking. I was middle management at a manufacturing firm, steady, reliable, or so I believed. When the company started restructuring, I saw the writing on the wall, but I told myself I was safe. I had seniority, I had relationships, I was wrong. The day they called me into the conference room, I knew before anyone spoke. There were 2 people from HR I had never met before, and my direct supervisor would not make eye contact. They used words like downsizing and market pressures and thanked me for my years of service. They gave me a severance package that seemed generous until I did the math on how long it would actually last. I cleaned out my desk in under an hour. 22 years fit into 2 cardboard boxes and a canvas tote bag. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a long time before I could bring myself to drive home. When I told Sarah that evening, she just stared at me. We were in the living room, and she had been folding laundry on the couch. I remember she was holding one of my dress shirts, the blue one she had bought me for Christmas 2 years before. She set it down very carefully and smoothed it with both hands. Then she asked me how this could happen, not in a supportive way, asking what went wrong or what we would do next, but in an accusatory way, as if I had done this deliberately, as if I had chosen this. I tried to explain, but every word that came out of my mouth sounded like an excuse, even to me. Over the next few days, I watched something in her shut down. She stopped asking questions. She stopped looking at me during dinner. She stayed late at work and came home smelling like wine and perfume I did not recognize. I told myself she was processing, that she needed time, that we would get through this together. On the 3rd night, she sat me down at the kitchen table and told me she could not do this anymore. Not the unemployment, though that was part of it. She said she could not be with someone who had let his life slip away like this. She said she had been unhappy for years, that I had stopped trying, stopped growing. She said I had become invisible. I asked her what she meant. I asked her to give me time to find another job, to fix whatever was broken. She shook her head and told me it was too late. She had already spoken to a lawyer. She had already found an apartment closer to her office. She would come back for her things in a few weeks, and then on that cold morning she left. I stood in the kitchen for a long time after her car disappeared, holding a cup of coffee that had gone cold in my hands. The house felt enormous and empty, like a museum of a life that no longer existed. The first month was the worst. I applied for jobs during the day and drank too much at night. I would wake up on the couch with my laptop still open on my chest, the screen dark, my neck stiff. I got a few interviews, but nothing ever materialized. You are overqualified, they would say, or we are looking for someone with a more recent skill set. What they meant was I was too old, too expensive, too stuck in my ways. I started to believe them. I stopped shaving every day. I stopped going to the gym. I ordered takeout and let the containers pile up on the counter. Friends called less and less. I think they did not know what to say to me, and I did not have the energy to make it easier for them. Sarah's lawyer sent the divorce papers in the mail. I signed them at the kitchen table with a pen that barely worked, having to go over my signature 3 times before the ink would stick. It felt like signing away everything I had been. I mailed them back the same day. A few weeks later, it was done. 19 years, dissolved. She took half of everything, which was her right, and I did not fight it. I did not have the fight left in me. The house felt even emptier after she came for her things. Whole rooms echoed now. I would walk through them at night and feel like a ghost haunting his own life. It was my daughter who finally said what I needed to hear. Emily was 21 then, finishing her last year of college. She had always been closer to her mother, and I understood why. Sarah was present in a way I had not been. Sarah went to every recital and parent-teacher conference and knew the names of all Emily's friends. I was always working, always tired, always telling myself I would be more present next month, next year. Emily called me one night, about 2 months after the divorce was finalized. I had not spoken to her much since Sarah left. I was ashamed, I think. Ashamed that I had failed, that I had driven her mother away, that I could not even keep my own life together. She did not waste time with pleasantries. She told me I sounded terrible. She told me she was worried about me. And then she said something I will never forget. She said, "Dad, you get to decide what happens next. Just because Mom left does not mean your life is over. You are not that old, you are not dead, but you are acting like you are. And if you keep going like this, you will be." It was harsh, maybe, but it was true. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a long time, thinking about what she had said. I realized I had been waiting for someone to save me, for something to change on its own. But nothing was going to change unless I changed it. The next morning I got up early. I shaved. I showered. I made a real breakfast instead of just coffee and whatever I could find in the cupboard. I went to the library and checked out books on resume writing and interview skills. I signed up for an online course in project management software I had never used before. I started running in the mornings, just a mile at first, then 2, then 3. It hurt. Everything hurt. But it was a different kind of hurt than sitting on the couch feeling sorry for myself. This hurt had purpose. I stopped applying for jobs that were exactly like the one I had lost. I started looking at smaller companies, different industries, roles that scared me a little because they were outside my comfort zone. I got more interviews. I got rejected more times than I can count. But each rejection stung a little less than the one before. I was building calluses. I was learning. And slowly, very slowly, I started to feel like a person again, instead of just a collection of failures. It took almost 6 months, but I finally got an offer. It was not glamorous, a logistics coordinator position at a mid-sized distribution company. The pay was less than I had made before, but it was enough. More importantly, it was a start. I accepted it immediately. My first day back at work felt surreal. I was nervous in a way I had not been in decades. But I showed up early. I asked questions, I took notes. I made myself useful. I made myself necessary. And after a while, it stopped feeling like I was pretending and started feeling like I was actually doing something meaningful again. I started taking care of my space. I repainted the living room. I threw out all the old furniture that reminded me of Sarah and bought pieces that felt like mine. Not expensive things, just different things. I started cooking real meals again and inviting Emily over for dinner when she was home from school. We had not been close in years, but we started talking more. Really talking. I told her I was sorry for not being around more when she was growing up. She told me she understood, but that it had hurt. We were honest with each other in a way we never had been before. It felt like building something new, instead of trying to repair something broken beyond fixing. I made new friends, or rather, I reconnected with old ones I had neglected. I joined a hiking group that met on weekends. I started going to a trivia night at a bar downtown. Small things, but they added up. I was not trying to become a different person. I was just trying to become a better version of myself. The version I might have been if I had not spent 20 years sleepwalking through my own life. I started to understand what Sarah had meant when she said I had become invisible. I had made myself invisible. I had stopped being curious stopped challenging myself, stopped growing. And you cannot ask someone to stay in love with a person who has stopped being interesting, even to themselves. About a year and a half after Sarah left, I got a promotion at work. Nothing huge, but it came with more responsibility and a raise that made things comfortable again. I bought a new car, the first one I had picked out entirely for myself, and I could not remember how long. I started dating, cautiously, a few dinners here and there, nothing serious. I was not looking for someone to complete me or fix me. I had spent the last year and a half learning that I needed to be whole on my own first. But it was nice to have company sometimes, to remember that I was still capable of connection. Emily graduated that spring. I went to her ceremony and felt a pride so fierce it almost hurt. Sarah was there with her new boyfriend, a guy from her office she had apparently been seeing for almost a year. It should have bothered me, but it did not. Or maybe it did, but not in the way I expected. I did not feel jealous or betrayed. I felt something closer to relief. She had moved on. She looked happy, and I realized I was happy too, in my own way. We were polite to each other, even friendly. We took pictures together with Emily between us, smiling. It was not fake. We had both become different people than the ones who had stood in that kitchen and watched a marriage dissolve. I did not hear from Sarah directly for months after that. We would occasionally overlap at events involving Emily, always cordial, always brief. I had stopped thinking about her in the way I used to, stopped imagining scenarios where she realized she had made a mistake and came back. I had accepted that part of my life was over, and I was okay with that. More than okay. I was grateful, in a strange way. Her leaving had forced me to rebuild, and in rebuilding, I had discovered parts of myself I did not know were still there. Then, on a Tuesday evening in October, almost 2 years after she had left, Sarah called me. Not texted. Called. I almost did not answer, but curiosity got the better of me. Her voice sounded strange, tentative. She asked if we could meet for coffee. She said there were some things she wanted to talk about. I agreed, mostly because I could not think of a reason not to. We met at a cafe halfway between our places, neutral territory. She was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table, her hands wrapped around a cup like she was trying to warm them. She looked different, older maybe, or just more tired. She smiled when she saw me, but it did not quite reach her eyes. We made small talk for a few minutes. How is work? How is Emily? The weather? And then she said what she had come to say. She told me things with her boyfriend had not worked out. She told me she had been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of therapy. She said she had made a mistake. She said she realized now that she had been running from her own unhappiness and had blamed me for it instead of looking at herself. She said she had been unfair. She said she missed me. I listened to all of it without interrupting. When she finished, she looked at me expectantly, like she was waiting for me to say something, to react. I took a sip of my coffee and thought about how to respond. A part of me, a small part, felt vindicated. She had come back. She had admitted she was wrong. It was what I had wanted so badly in those early months, what I had dreamed about on the worst nights. But sitting there across from her, I realized I did not feel what I thought I would feel. I did not feel angry or smug or even particularly hurt. I felt something closer to sympathy. I told her I appreciated her honesty. I told her I understood that the end of our marriage was not all her fault, that I had played my part in it too. I told her I had spent the last 2 years working on myself, figuring out who I was outside of our relationship, outside of my old job, outside of all the identities I had hidden behind. And I told her as gently as I could that I was not interested in going backwards, that I did not want to try again, that I wished her well truly, but that what we had was in the past, and that was where it needed to stay. She looked surprised, maybe even hurt. I think she had expected me to jump at the chance, to be grateful that she was giving me another opportunity. But I was not the same man she had left. That man would have said yes immediately, would have taken her back without question, desperate and grateful and willing to ignore every red flag just to not be alone. But I was not desperate anymore. I was not alone. Not really. I had built a life I was proud of, a life that was mine, and I was not willing to risk that for the comfort of something familiar that had not worked the first time. We finished our coffee. She asked if we could stay friends, stay in touch, beyond just events with Emily. I said maybe, that we could see how it goes. We hugged in the parking lot, and it felt like closure. Real closure. Not the abrupt severing of her leaving, or the legal finality of the divorce papers, but something quieter and more complete. I watched her drive away, and this time I did not feel the same hollow emptiness I had felt that morning in the kitchen. I felt calm, certain. I got in my car and drove home to a house that finally felt like it belonged to me. That was almost a year ago now. Sarah and I are friendly when we see each other, which is not often. She is dating someone new. I am seeing someone too, a woman I met through the hiking group. Her name is Linda. She is kind and funny and has her own life, her own interests, her own history. We are taking things slow, which suits both of us. Emily likes her, which matters to me more than I expected it would. My career has continued to progress. I was promoted again 6 months ago. I am not making what I made before I was laid off, but I am close. And more importantly, I like what I do. I feel engaged with my work in a way I never did before. I think about that morning in the kitchen sometimes, the sound of Sarah's car pulling away, the feeling of standing there holding cold coffee and thinking my life was over. I was so sure that everything was ending, and in a way it was. But what I could not see then was that endings and beginnings are not always separate things. Sometimes they are the same moment, just viewed from different angles. Sarah leaving did not destroy me. It forced me to stop coasting, to stop hiding, to stop being someone I was not even sure I wanted to be anymore. I do not think she did me a favor by leaving. That would be too simple, too clean. It hurt. It was brutal and lonely, and there were days I did not think I would get through it. But I did. And on the other side of it, I found a version of myself I like better. A version that is more honest, more present, more alive. A version that does not need someone else to validate his existence or prop up his sense of worth. I am grateful for that, even if I am not grateful for how I got here. People ask me sometimes if I am angry at Sarah, if I resent her for leaving when things got hard. The truth is, I do not. I understand why she left. I was not the partner she needed, and she was not willing to wait around to see if I would become that person. It would have been nice if she had given me the chance, if she had been more patient, more communicative. But I cannot change what she did. I can only change what I did with it. And I chose to use it as a catalyst instead of a death sentence. If I could go back and talk to the man I was that morning, standing in the kitchen with his world falling apart, I do not know what I would say. I do not think there is anything I could have told him that would have made it easier. Maybe that is the point. Maybe some things you just have to go through. Maybe some lessons cannot be taught, only learned. But if I had to say something, I think it would be this. You are going to be okay. Not today, not tomorrow, but eventually, you are going to discover that you are more resilient than you think. You are going to realize that your worth is not tied to your job or your marriage or any external thing. You are going to rebuild. And when you do, you are going to be glad that you had to. That is the thing about loss. It clears space. And what you choose to put in that space, that is what defines you. I chose to put in work and discipline and honesty. I chose to build something that was mine, something that could not be taken away by a layoff or a divorce or any other external circumstance. I chose to become the kind of person I wanted to be, not the kind of person I thought I was supposed to be. And that has made all the difference. So no, I did not take Sarah back when she asked, and I do not regret that decision. I hope she finds what she is looking for. I hope she becomes the person she wants to be, the same way I am trying to. But I know now that some doors, once closed, should stay that way. not out of bitterness or anger, but out of respect for the person you have become since they closed. I am not the man she left, I am someone better, and that man does not need to go backwards to feel whole.